Today I'm bringing you the Arc Stormtrooper. Not that kind of Stormtrooper you might be thinking of with the Star Wars crossover. But this is a soldier who just brings lightning to the battlefield by shooting enemies left and right. This is of course using the new aspect Storm's Keep, and this aspect is awesome. You place your rally barricade and then you get tons of bolt charge constantly, but there's some ways to make it come back even faster, and as the engineer I am, I will help you optimize it and get you as much bolt charge as humanly possible, give you all the tips and tell you what works and when. For exotic in this, we are using Heart of Inmost Light. You actually have a few options here, but Heart of Inmost Light is just really good. It gives you good barricade uptime, and it gives you good grenade and melee uptime too if you need those. See here, we are just trashing through these enemies. We are also taking advantage of Spark of Beacon's blind so that the enemies can generally not fight back against this, which can help in harder to survive situations. The barricade is surprisingly strong. It's actually a really good defense if you can keep it up. And the cooldown is really short, so you can keep it up quite a bit. We also have a great damage super in Thunder Crash. This boss tries to slam me, but slam him back. And then we just clean up more barricades. Are you taking too much damage? Put a new barricade down. Block the enemies. Also vacuum up the orbs thanks to powerful attraction. Make your life a lot easier. If this sounds good to you, let's get into it. I'm Engineer. As I've been doing lately, here's a quick overview of the build. This build's goal is to hang out behind your barricade and gun everything down with lightning from Bolt Charge, our new arc verb. It's pretty much good in all content. It is good in casual content with a lot of ads. It's good for bosses. I literally just ran it through the new dungeon on normal. I don't do contest mode, I'm not good enough, but it was very strong the whole way and helps out your team. For this video, I tested this up to 15 power level under. Can go higher with some team healing. I think this is going to show up in a lot of GMs and raids in the future because of the team support and extra damage and damage phases. So pros, crazy damage for you and allies, very good defenses thanks to barricade as long as the enemies are in front of you. Really great DPS support, just can't emphasize that enough. I don't list it here, but there's also potential for pretty good crowd control on enemies depending on the weapons you use. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Cons, if you're getting shot from all directions, the barricade falls apart pretty quickly. Too many melee enemies can make your life really awkward and push you off your barricade, and healing relies entirely on orbs. If you have a teammate that can provide some healing to you, that is really, really helpful. Overall, just really good build. You're seeing a lot of these. I think I have a few things to add here and some details to help optimize it, and some mistakes to kind of correct. So first, let's talk about the exotic. I'm running Heart of Inmost Light. This is a exotic that you can get from any source, and this one is complicated to explain how it works. The UI for this is notoriously wrong, but generally using one ability will empower the other two with more regen and more strength. The strength does not apply to barricade though, because it doesn't do damage. Say for instance, use your barricade, you will get more melee regen and more grenade regen than if you use your melee. The grenade regen will kick up to the second tier, which is plus 800%. First tier is plus 400% base ability regen, which is crazy. Class ability regen is much smaller. It's 25% at the first tier and 50% at the second, but once again, class ability is a really short cooldown. Overall, it's just really strong. The extra grenade damage and regen can also be really good for boss damage phases, so that's a big part of why we run it, and you just don't need any mod support to keep that class ability up. There are some other options. There's hazardous propulsion, which will give bonus damage to rockets, and it generates some extra damage rockets, but the problem is with how Bolt Charge is structured, rocket weapons don't really make sense with it. Actium Warrig's a pretty good option. It'll auto reload your auto rifles and machine guns, so you don't have to. You can just keep focusing on doing damage. And then Armamentarium lets you go a little bit more into the grenades and have an extra grenade and a free firepower mod, but honestly I think we'll get more out of Heart of Inmost Light here. Fortunately, all four of these are chest exotics, so you can just play around freely with it. As for your stat priorities, very standard stat spread: resilience, discipline, recovery, strength. lights. I want to first focus on our new aspects, Storm's Keep and Bolt Charge. So I've included some snips from the Destiny Data Compendium. Storm's Keep is a new aspect that when you use your class ability, you get 4 Bolt Charge. And then when you're behind a barricade, you'll get another Bolt Charge every 0.6 seconds. And then the coolest part about this is that you can drop the Bolt Charge Lightning Strike when you have 10 stacks of Bolt Charge by just shooting an enemy, which is really good. Now, one thing to note here, and we will mention it again later, Spark of Frequency does not increase the number of Bolt Charge stacks gained from Storm's Keep. It increases other sources, but not this one. Now, how does Bolt Charge work? You generally build up stacks, kind of like Ignition, and when you get to 10 stacks, your next ability damage, or with Storm's Keep weapon damage, it will drop a lightning bolt. One thing to note, you can actually discharge this with an unpowered melee, which is a really reliable way to put it on a specific enemy or just get rid of an enemy that's up close to you. So that's really good. The way to charge it up, once you get 1 charge from either an ability or any other source, you can build up the rest of the stacks just by dealing weapon damage. And it is based on the size of magazine of your weapon. So once you have enough damage instances equal to 15% of your magazine, rounded down, plus 2, you'll gain a stack. For area denial GLs, it's like every 3 or 4 hits, and then 3 ammo snipers, it's every hit will gain you a stack of Bolt Charge. All that to say, larger magazines are gonna generally be a little bit more efficient. High fire rates with larger magazines, very good. You don't necessarily want to use this on a hand cannon, because say that you get a 10 round magazine, that's going to require like 3 shots every time you only get 1 Bolt Charge. We'll talk more about the weapons in a little bit, but I thought that was just important to know so you can kind of smartly choose your weapons. Moving over to our other aspects and abilities, we want to take Touch of Thunder, which will empower our grenades, and specifically we want to empower Pulse Grenade. This makes it so that Pulse Grenades will periodically create an Ionic Trace if they hit enemies. This can happen every 1 second, which is really strong. Pulse Grenade pulses every 0.7 seconds. So basically every other pulse you will generate an Ionic Trace, which is really effective. The other benefit of Touch of Thunder is it will increase the damage with each pulse. So if you have a boss and you can keep them on this, the last few pulses will do 25% extra grenade damage, which is really good. Now, why are we doing all this? Ionic Traces are very good for ability regen. They will give you 15% class ability every time you collect one. And on top of that, every Ionic Trace can give you up to 2 Bolt Charge depending on how your fragments are configured. So that's really good. For our other abilities, I like Thunder Crash the most for quick damage. It lets you get back to shooting your weapons really quick, so that's great. Works on most bosses pretty well. You can use Fist of Havoc if you want a roaming super. That's totally valid too. But generally, I can handle those with the barricade and shooting enemies. The melee, Thunderclap's just the best. It's 90% black gain factor. It's also really good for pushing enemies off your barricade if they're kind of getting up close to you. Rally Barricade is obviously the best option here because it lets you get full benefit of Storm's Keep, and it boosts reload speed for those damage phases, and you can shoot over it. And it gives you cover. Towering Barricade will give you more cover, but it's harder to kind of shoot around. If you're in an encounter that is more run and gun heavy and you don't think you can reliably put the barricade down, you can switch to Thruster, but it's really just use Thruster and you get 4 Bolt Charge, and it's kind of weak. And you don't get the benefit of being able to trigger Bolt Charge with your weapon anymore, so that's unfortunate. Moving over to Fragments. Our first fragment is Spark of Discharge. This will give us Ionic Traces on weapon kills after we fill a certain amount. It's usually about 3 minor kills, but the most important part is whenever we collect an Ionic Trace, we get a stack of Bolt Charge. Our next fragment is Spark of Magnitude. This is the one that lets Pulse Grenades pulse 2 more times, and that will generally get us about 1 more Ionic Trace because of the internal cooldown on those on Touch of Thunder. Next, we're going to take Spark of Frequency, which whenever you gain Bolt Charge, you will gain an extra stack of it. As I mentioned earlier, this does not apply to Storm's Keep, so keep that in mind, but with all the Ionic Traces we create, this is just very valuable. The fourth slot, I keep this kind of flexible. If you're on a boss, I recommend Spark of Shock for jolting grenades. If you are on an ad clear heavy encounter or you're using a special weapon a lot, then Spark of Beacons is going to be more valuable because you will blind enemies on each kill. And that's really good. Alternatively, if you are really taking too much damage, use Spark of Resistance for 25% damage resistance while surrounded, and that will help a good bit. Moving over to mods and armor stats. We generally just want to build for orbs for healing and also as much super energy as possible while we're at it. So we are going to take triple firepower because we're using a damage over time grenade, and we can get an orb every 1 second with 3 firepower mods. and the orbs will also be worth more super energy. We're going to take Harmonic Siphon. We're also going to take Reaper because we cast that class ability so much. Several sources of orbs. And then to use those orbs for healing, we will have Recuperation on the legs. To get some more super energy, we're going to use both Ashes to Assets and Hands-On because both of our abilities will be pretty solid for kills. And then we have Arc Weapon Surges on the legs to get some extra weapon damage on top of everything. One of the most important mods in this entire setup is Powerful Attraction on the class item. As I mentioned, you're very reliant on the orbs, so having Powerful Attraction will let you collect orbs in a radius around you when you place the barricade, and that's very helpful. And last but not least, you need Time Dilation to make sure that your armor charges stay longer for those arc weapon surges. Over on the armor stats, we want to max out resilience and we want to max out discipline. Resilience also controls our class ability regen speed, so we want it maxed out, and it's also damage resistance. Discipline we're using for those pulse grenades. Then get as much strength as you can get and as much recovery and get intellect to 30. Moving over to artifact mods, we have several here that are effective for this build. 3 of them are very arc focused. Dielectric, which will give us extra bolt charge stacks when we kill arc debuffed enemies. Really strong. We will also get, if this is boosted, which you can get to already in this act, you can also generate extra orbs of power when killing those arc debuffed enemies, which is once again really straightforward in this build. In column 4 we have Flashover. It will give you amplified whenever you reach max bolt charge stacks, but the best part about this is it increases the damage of bolt charge considerably. Definitely get this as soon as possible. I've recently unlocked this and it is a game changer. Over in column 5, our last artifact perk is Defibrillating Blast, which will give you full bolt charge when you stun a champion, but most importantly, it'll make bolt charges now inflict Jolt, which is really great and helps trigger those other 2 artifact mods. Lastly, in column 5, we have Heavy Ordnance Regeneration. So as we deal damage with machine guns, you will get grenade and melee regeneration speed, and you get damage resistance on top of it, which will just take this build to a whole nother level. I don't have this in any of the gameplay I'm doing, so keep that in mind. You can get another 25% damage resistance on top and even more ability regen. Moving over to weapons, as I mentioned before, bolt charge progresses at 15% of the weapon's magazine, rounded down, +2. So that +2 is a lot less significant the larger the magazine. Perks like Onslaught are going to be really good because those are boosting the rate of fire and reload speed at the same time. Generally, your best primary weapons are going to be rapid fire or adaptive auto rifles. I'm personally using the VS Pyroelectric Repellent from Vesper's Host. It has some great perks, including Onslaught. It also has jolting feedback and attrition orbs. All these things are great. Trace rifles are the best special weapons to use if you're using them full time primarily. The best trace rifle right now is going to be the exotic one, Cold Heart. This is really great because it also generates Ionic Traces as you deal damage. You don't even need to get kills. You can see that in the intro gameplay that I had earlier. And because it's a special, you can use Spark of Beacons to blind with it. If you want a legendary arc trace rifle, there's only one, and it's Path of Least Resistance, and you can get it from Operation Seraph Shield. But we should be getting another one in Guardian games this year, if rumors are to be believed. Another option for special weapons are area denial grenade launchers. They can progress the bolt charge pretty considerably. I personally like Lost Signal because it's in the kinetic slot and has auto-loading holster, so you can just fire it out and then get back to shooting like normal. For heavy weapons, rapid fire or aggressive machine guns are the best heavies. For machine guns, we have a new arc machine gun with this episode called Watchful Eye that has a lot of great perk combos, and we also have the great exotic machine gun Thunderlord, which also can generate some bolt charges on its own. So all these are really good options. If you're using a craftable or enhanceable weapon, one of the newer ones since Final Shape is launched, I highly recommend the Synergy weapon mod because that will generate extra Ionic Traces as you get kills. You have a lot of options here. Generally what my loadout has been is Lost Signal in the kinetic slot, then VS Pyroelectric Repellent, and then Thunderlord or the machine gun. But you can mix it up, see what works for you. All these options are really solid. I just want to do a longer gameplay loop. This is once again the opening of Contest of Elders. This is about 10 or 11 power level under, just to kind of match my recent videos. This activity bumped up with this episode. See here we have found a cozy little corner and set up our barricade, and we are just shooting every enemy that comes our way. And you can see a pretty constant stream of Ionic Traces. You just have to re-up that barricade. Just watch a little bit for damage. Barricade does a lot of work protecting you, and it has a taunt mechanic so that enemies are trying to shoot at it, but they will hit you from time to time, so keep that in mind. If you haven't seen them yet, there's new Bane enemies with shields, and you can only break the shield by punching them, so that is a slightly new mechanic. Once again here, we're pretty much just using a legendary auto rifle with some weapon surges, and we're turning through even like mini boss enemies. Just keep firing. This particular weapon does have onslaught on it, so as I am getting kills, the rate of fire is going up. Shooting enemies. If there's too many enemies near you, Thunderclap's great, and it's a good way to trigger that bolt charge as well. Kill that enemy. Air denial geo. Through enemies. The boss is starting to spawn now, so we'll have to watch out for that. Try and put out those pulse grenades whenever possible. One thing I should be doing better about here is using lost signal to just get some extra damages instances. Model prisoner just spawned in front of us, and it's pretty much already dead. This is with power level disadvantage. This boss is notoriously tanky and annoying. It is a abomination. There we go. Let's get used to lost signal. It's also a good way to keep enemies a little bit off you. You can see those Ionic Traces just flying back to us thanks to the Touch of Thunder pulse grenade. Barricade's back up as soon as it's down. Rally Barricade gives a sizable boost to reload speed, so that's great. And we can just use that Thunderlord to turn the boss down and just finish him off with a super for fun. And then just get the rest of these enemies. The gameplay loop for this is extremely simple, as you just saw. Place your barricade, throw pulses on crowds of enemies or bosses, shoot as much as possible, use Thunder Crash for large targets. That's it. There's really not much more to this build. It's really simple, but very effective, and a lot of fun. It is very important where you place your barricade in some encounters, so think about cover, think about where enemies are coming from if you're aware of it. All those things will help. Yeah, I'm just going to bring the build review back up as we wrap up. That's pretty much all I've got for today. Thank you for watching. I just hit 1,000 subscribers today. I really appreciate so much all the support. It's meant a lot. I'm really glad that people are liking the videos and the content. I really put a lot of work into make my videos as beneficial as possible for viewers, because I've watched a lot of build videos and always been a little frustrated with them. So try and make these as accessible as possible. There will always be timestamps on the videos of every part. The slides that I use will be linked in the description. The dim link is in the description. Any references are also linked in the description. There's a wealth of information there. You may also just feel free to ask me questions in the comments. I love talking about builds, and if you're interested in more discussion, please join my Discord. It's a lot of fun, and I talk about builds all the time, and you'll probably hear about a build before I post it. So, if all that sounds good to you, check it out. And with that, I'll let you go. Thanks. Have a good one.